Hello, this is Dr. Paul Cottrell, and I'm going to be doing part two with this Winston Marshall show, interviewing Ayaan Ali, and and the second part of this will be going over a video by John Tossell about IQs and race. So please make sure that you subscribe to all my channels. I have 3 channels on YouTube: Brighteon, Bitchute, and Rumble. The links are in the description of this video and all my videos. So please subscribe. Also follow me on X and GETTR so you get the notifications so you're up to date on everything I publish.
I love the idea of trying to encourage courage.
Yeah.
And the problem for the Mecca Muslim types in Britain is that when they put their head above the parapet, they're given death threats, and
Yes.
it's
like your MPs.
Quite, and it's even more perilous for them than the non-Muslims talking about the issue of Islam.
Yeah.
Because their lives are in danger. And so where are those? How do we create space for those Britons, those Muslim Britons? How do we give them a platform and a voice?
I think the really brave, courageous Muslims, some of them still are as Muslims, some of them ex-Muslims like myself, who think that they can come out and speak out against this. They have done that and they're doing it.
Mm.
And some of them are managing it, and some of them feel disillusioned and disheartened and feel that what they're doing is futile. It puts them in danger and they don't seem to achieve anything, and they seem to be rejected themselves by the societies that they want to preserve. So let me put that first there. But what I think I want to be very explicit about is that we cannot have a system where you're going to set one group of citizens against another group of citizens. This isn't something for the citizens to do anymore. I think what we're looking at is for our elite. It's the people we've elected and put in office, whether they're on the center left or on the center right. It's about the people who are in charge of our economics and our academics and so on. It's these people, our elites, to come together and say, this is a problem we can't ignore anymore. We can't live in denial anymore. We are seeing I mean, you have to go and visit places like Sweden. You have to understand that in Germany, the AfD is now almost the biggest party. Every country in Europe that has accepted numerous numbers of Muslims, that has also allowed, while allowing this Islamist infrastructure to flourish, is facing the exact same problems. We're seeing the same things in Michigan, in America. This problem
What's happening in Michigan in America? I haven't followed that.
And it's not just Michigan, but it's happening across some of the states where there are large numbers of Muslims that can, in fact, affect the election outcome in 2024. Rashida Tlaib, who is an elected member from Michigan into the Congress, has threatened and is going around Michigan she's a Democrat, and she's telling her constituents not to vote for President Biden, or not to. I think she was describing a local place, but I mean, I read into it as don't vote for them because they're not giving us what we want.
Relating to Israel.
Relating to Israel in this case. But in other cases, I mean, it had to do with the LGBT communities in Michigan, which have been hounded out of silence. So it's not just, we always say it starts with the Jews, but it doesn't stay there in terms of these hatreds. But I just think I really want to be explicit that you cannot, it's irresponsible now to ignore this problem, to deny and pretend that this is something that's going to go away on its own. And it's not something that you can give to residents, citizens. You don't want one subset of the population attacking taking matters into its own hand and attacking another subset of the population. That's exactly what you want to avoid. And the way to do it is for our leaders to come together and say, how do we tackle this?
Yeah.
But they have to be honest with one another.
Yeah.
And you cannot allow this infrastructure to continue.
Yeah, so on that, I have not got much hope, because if you look at the response to various Islamist attacks, you go back to Salman Rushdie, that should have been a matter for, there should have been a military kind of response to Iran after what happened to him, but there wasn't. There after 7/7 there was a prevent program which has been total flop. And after Manchester Arena, it was love, not hate. You just see this slow change. And now after Mike Freer, after this last week, what's happening in Parliament with Lindsay Hoyle, the reaction is kind of like, we've got to protect ourselves. We're not talking about it. So there's like maybe private conversations were happening, but no one publicly talking about it. At least after 7/7, there was a public conversation.
Yeah.
Now, if the very
no
few people who talk about it, like Suella Braverman, she gets for saying multiculturalism has failed. She gets hounded out of she got hounded out as Home Secretary. There's just punishment. So the hope of the elites and the politicians having this conversation so that it doesn't end up getting violent, so that there's good-hearted, good faith conversation at the top. I'm very little faith of that happening. Do you have any hope of that happening?
Well, I mean, like I said, I don't really. I'm describing to you what I've seen, what I've experienced, and it's exactly what you're describing now. But this was building up over the last 2 decades. And I mentioned Christopher Caldwell in the article, but he's an American who came as a journalist to observe and then wrote the book, The Revolution Underway in Europe, Reflections on the Revolution in Europe. And the reflections on the revolution he's talking about is the Islamist takeover. And revolutions take a long time. So very often you can ignore and be in denial for a long time until there is that moment where things flip. But before Christopher Caldwell was the British historian Bernard Lewis, Walter Lockyer. There were really big minds, great thinkers. Neil Ferguson, my husband, said something about Eurabia probably 20, maybe even 30 years ago. And this was all just based on the demographic side of it. Europeans are not having babies, getting old, a young generation coming from Muslim majority countries, and then this infrastructure that totally turns them into radical Islamists. Again, not all of them, but enough to create this sort of unsettled experience that we're all going through, and the failure of social cohesion. And then what does that mean? And so we're getting tastes of what it means, flavors of it.
Mm-hmm.
You've got to go to certain parts of Sweden which you actually can't go because you can't. Parts of France, parts of Britain, parts of Germany, parts of, I would say even in this case, parts of America. And so seeing this and seeing that it's just not going away, it's getting worse and worse. Are you just going to sit around and let it happen? And I'm talking to the leadership. In America, we are very, very polarized. It's very, very difficult for us to come together. But I am told the British have a royal family and a king, and I wish him well. May he live long. But perhaps it's on that level where, as the figurehead who's above, the daily fray of politics, maybe he can bring these people together and say, we've got to do something about this.
Well, I'm going to bring in a bit of pessimism now.
Yeah.
We mentioned the term Islamophobia.
You're bringing in pessimism now? I think what we were talking about was all pessimistic.
Well, because if we're on the topic of expecting politicians to do something.
Yeah.
And I think it is important to note, as we already have done, that there is Muslim hate on the rise. And I think this actually just proves your point, is that there isn't being a discussion, a truthful, honest discussion at the top of society about what's going on. And so what's actually happened is there's a huge rise in anti-Semitism, huge rise in anti-Muslim hate, because there's this frustration, people taking it out, and that's not acceptable, and that has to be changed. So here's my black pill for you. the Labour Party, who almost certainly will come to government, they take this as their definition of Islamophobia, which is from the APPG definition, as rooted in racism and is a type of racism that targets expressions of Muslimness or perceived Muslimness.
Mhm.
So I didn't realize Islam was a race. That's the Labour Party. So they're going to have this definition. So they're framing criticism, they're framing Islamophobia as a race issue, obviously ignoring that if you're from
Yes.
West Africa, East Africa, Albania, the Balkans, Pakistan, there's all the different races of Muslims, is of course religion. So then if you want to talk about dishonesty, it's completely dishonest definition of what Islamophobia is. Then it gets worse than that, by the way.
But can I just comment on that? Because you call it dishonesty. It's cowardice. It is the most cowardly statement because it wholeheartedly swallows that's exactly what the Islamists dictated. And then the Labour Party takes that on and says this is what the Labour Party believes. They don't believe it. They're scared. They're terrified of what the Islamists will do. They're terrified of losing elections, but beyond losing elections, I think they're also terrified of violence.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is very similar to what's going on with the BLM movement in the United States. You scare the society in terms of killings and theft, destruction of property, and eventually you will get leaders in government trying to capitulate, trying to pacify the BLM movement. And this is also happening within, some of these communities that are primarily Islamic. That if they don't like what you're doing, they're going to create havoc and destruction to the point where they're going to force the government to try to capitulate to their demands. We have a society, at least in the United States, that is placating to the ultra liberal agenda. Now, what's the paradoxical thing is that the caliphate is going to be antithetical if it reaches its goals to ultra liberalism. And this is what I mean by this: the snake will be eating its tail.
And so that is a statement that is accepted, not because one believes in. I don't think Keir Starmer believes in it. I think he had to go along with it
because he's trying to win.
It's supposed to make common sense, numerical common sense.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe he wants to win the election,
mm-hmm.
and he reckons that it's best not to upset the Islamists.
And if he gets a majority, that becoming an official government definition of Islamophobia becomes a very real thing. It's something that's been argued for a long time.
They are going to stand on it. The Islamists are going to stand on it. They're going to say they will try and turn that into a bill. They tried that several times, and in some places they succeeded. The whole array of hate legislation that we've been seeing, hate speech legislation we've been seeing, it stems from that.
So I hated to break it to you, because another one of the definitions is on the Labour Party website, is to suggest that Muslims individually or as a group in British society pose a threat to British or European society, civilization, or values, for example, by claiming that Muslims are a demographic threat to British people, by claiming that Muslims are taking over British society or civic or political institutions through their presence in the same, or by catastrophizing immigration from Muslim majority countries. Unfortunately, that means that this entire conversation has been Islamophobic. Yeah,
it's been Islamophobic, but I think the irony of it all is the word phobia.
Mm-hmm.
Fear of Islam at the moment, for the last few decades and going on, is not an irrational fear.
Mm.
And so I think we should go beyond these smears. The word racist, the word Islamophobe, all of these language that was invented to, and we're going back to where we started, paint people into a wall because they don't want to be called bigots. I think it's losing its effectiveness.
Yeah.
And it has to lose its effectiveness because we are where we are now.
And it's very dangerous because then when actual anti-Muslim hate comes up, when actual racism comes up,
yeah,
when you keep calling everyone far right,
yeah,
then when the actual far right turn up, which they're in danger of doing if we don't sort out these problems.
Yeah. Well, I think what you have to, again, you're too young to, you haven't, I don't know how old you are when you were, and the people who are going, who listen to you, and they're too young to remember. But just go back to what the Balkans looked like in the early 1990s, 1991, 1992, what the Balkans looked like. That's where Europe is headed. And so you faff around about words, phobe this and phobe that, far right, and all this just nonsense, really. Because, and for me, all of these expressions are just, it's denial. It's these, our elites are too terrified to think through this problem and come up with an acceptable solution.
Mm-hmm.
And so they allow these write-ups to become part of the program. And they say, let's just appease these Islamists because maybe it will get better. And it never gets better. And the local populations are rising up against this. They are not far right. These are sincere local populations who are saying, we don't want to live this way. We don't want to be overwhelmed by immigrants who come here, who don't hate, who hate us, who hate our way of life, who
See, this is the bigger issue. And that is, you have immigrants that are coming to a country not wanting to assimilate, but to conquer. And until you stop that, it's going to get worse, to the point where it's probably going to go kinetic and the people will have civil war. This is why I keep on saying the only way to solve this problem is Esau must die by the sword.
Our daughters who make our streets unsafe, who wants to impose these ideas on us, and they're rising up against it, and they're not far right, but it's the elites that are allowing this to happen. If the people whom we've elected into these governments don't do anything about it, then you're leaving this to the population. And that's why I keep saying it's going to be like the Balkans.
Yeah.
And in some areas, that's already the case. I mean, look at what's going on in Ireland.
Hello, America. What's your stockbroker done for you lately? Here's what we're doing. 540% last year. You want
There's a immediate.
Let me go to commercial here to help support the store. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the drops. I have honey and lemon drops in 100 count. This is structural nano silver that helps soothe your throat and neutralize pathogens. I also have it in blueberry in 100 count, also drop form. Now I have lozenges in a 21 count. I have it in elderberry zinc and manuka honey lemon. So please go to the store and get the lozenges and the drops to help you get through the tail end of the cold season and the beginning of the allergy season. I also have a very high quality probiotic. It's in a powdered form, and I mix it with my food. You can mix it with also just with water, but you take it every day and it'll get the proper gut biome that you need. I also have this, I also carry a tablet probiotic for the people that don't like using powder. There's some people that prefer using the powder as a supplement, and others prefer just to use the tablet form. So please go to my store and get the probiotic either in the tablet or in the powder form. That's the-studio-reykjavik.com to improve your gut biome. And why would you want to improve your gut biome? It's very simple. You want to improve your gut biome to improve the consistency of your stools, reduce the chances of having lower GI disease, and to improve absorption and improve the communication between your gut, your liver, and your gut and your brain. By having that better communication, you're going to have better metabolism and more energy. So please go to my store at the-studio-reykjavik.com and get the probiotics. This is PNN.
Comes to mind is, I think this was about a year ago, what happened in Liverpool, where there were a bunch of there were some hostels or hotels where refugees were let to stay, and then a couple of the refugees were caught trying to molest young local girls.
Yeah.
And there was a big protest of working class Scousers outside the hostel, and all of the mainstream media called it far-right protests.
Yeah.
Pretty much ignoring what had actually happened, like the true crime of young British girls getting molested. And I could talk about the grooming gangs at length.
No, but I mean, what are these working class men supposed to do? They're damned if they defend their girls. They're damned if they don't. So they either allow their women to be molested and raped and assaulted, or they defend them and then they're called far right. And that you're seeing this all over Europe. Every European country that has a major Muslim population is going through the exact same problems. And and we talked about radical Islam, we talked about political Islam, but we didn't talk about some of the cultural aspects, such as just the sheer misogyny, the hatred of girls and women, and what they do to girls and women. We haven't talked about that at all. That's not.
This is why I keep on saying the ultra liberal is going to have, the snake is going to eat its tail. The ultra liberals are going to be eating each other. The ultra liberals in the United States has promoted this concept of all inclusion, not realizing that some groups, when you include them in society, may actually come and attack you. And when it comes to the caliphate, they're going to be negative towards many of the ultra liberal policies. So, if you're a woman, you're not probably going to be on the positive end of a caliphate. So, keep in mind that ultra liberal policies may end up eating itself.
There's not people who are flaunting religion when they do that. They're just lustful men out there to get women, but they come from an environment where it's okay to hurt women.
So I've been following some of these speakers, and there's one guy I've been following called Dili Hussein, who's I think part of Five Pillar, and would probably come in, I don't know exactly, but might come in your Medina definition of Muslim, and he, I think there's a germ of truth in what he says, in that if you look at British or European girls, they are by comparison with traditional Muslim girls, they are, and this, I guess this also applies to men, but sleeping around, and they don't take themselves seriously. They don't protect their virginity, and sort of, I guess these aren't far away from like traditional Christian values that he's promoting, and he sees European as hedonistic, and has gone too far down that path. So that's a kind of the case for a traditionalist, and I think that some Europeans would agree that that's true, that it's gone too far, and then he will use that as a way of presenting the the Muslim point of view on how women should be behave and should be treated.
And so basically, he is giving an Islamist's recipe. Don't allow women to be out and about, women who are not dressed the way they should be, who don't stay at home, women who don't behave like Muslim women deserve to be raped and assaulted and molested. That's what I read into that statement. And so this whole concept of equality, where we are equal as men and women and equal before the law and free to move about any hour of the day or night anywhere, that is European law, European culture, Western civilization is exceptional because it has created circumstances where women and children feel safe and are safe and take their safety for granted. That's the aspiration. And so when you come in and you say, oh, well, you have these lustful men and, oh, the only way maybe this should be addressed is the women should change their behavior. That's what he...
Remember what I said about Ishmael. The soul root of Ishmael is a overactive sexuality, while the soul root of Esau is primarily of killing and hunting. Now, there is this merger of the two because part of the Esau lineage did marry into the Ishmael lineage. So you have certain groups of people within that region that have this over sexuality with a killing part of their personality. So this is just playing right into the soul root concept, this metaphysical aspect of Islam. I'm not wrong with this. You know, I know that some people would think that some of these ideas that I'm saying about soul root is it may be a bit crazy, but I am not wrong on this concept. And you know, I phrase it a little bit differently than what Ayaan is saying, but we're getting to the same conclusion, and that the only way to stop this, in my estimation, is to go kinetic against the caliphate. This is a new kind of crusade that's happening, and Western society cannot fail on this. If Western society fails, then you're talking about a new dark age.
Telling you is you've got to Islamize your society. It's the same as telling Jewish people, don't look Jewish, remove the kippah, bring down the locks, cut your hair, act as if you're not Jewish. In that way, then you wouldn't be molested, because if you look Jewish and you are attacked, you sort of brought it on yourself. And it's the same with gay people. Don't look gay, don't hold hands, don't kiss if you're a lesbian couple or a homosexual couple, because guess what? It's just not commonsensical for you to behave that in certain places. You're basically accepting the change in norms.
That's such an interesting observation. About 2 weeks ago, or maybe a week ago, there was a video of someone in Scotland, I think in Edinburgh, from the side of the road watching a pro-Palestine walk. And he was a Jewish man, he had a big beard, and he had a Magen David around his neck. And he's completely peaceful, he's just watching. A policeman comes up to him and asks him to hide his Magen David so as not to incite the crowd. So the police, in some sense, have internalized that worldview that you described.
Absolutely. So in other words, it's implemented, it's de facto, it's your default reality. In some areas in your country, it is common.
It's an element of being apologetic. And I'm seeing this in my country, in the United States, where the BLM movement is trying to get the non-Black citizen to be apologetic and to change norms. And so you see it in different manifestations. Let's say at a football game, you are hearing two national anthems. Well, I was born where there was only one national anthem. There was no such thing as the Black national anthem. You have people in the stadium taking a knee. This stuff is unacceptable, and it's trying to create some sort of an apologetic society, and a society where the oppressed, you're trying to elevate them into some sort of superiority category and demonize the oppressor in their eyes.
To do this again, I remember this 20 years ago from the Netherlands when some of these Muslim schools, and sometimes they weren't even Muslim schools, it's just that the majority of students came from Muslim households, and they would protest lessons against the Holocaust. They weren't going, they were going to skip the chapters that dealt with the Holocaust. Do you know what the Dutch thought was common sense to do? Not to teach. And violence against gay couples in Amsterdam, Rotterdam, some of these major cities where you have a large majority of Muslims, in some neighborhoods, in those neighborhoods, gay people were told, don't look gay. Jews were told, don't appear to be. So that was how the problem was dealt with. It was always to appease, to accommodate, to deny, to pretend, to buy time. And the argument, which maybe made sense back in the day, it didn't make sense to me, but it made sense to some of the people across the table from me who were making these arguments, was time will take care of this. They will sooner or later become like us, just give them time. And what are we seeing now? No, we are becoming like them. We are hiding our Star of David. We are hiding, our affection for one another if we happen to be gay. We are, as women, being told, careful. I know this from Sweden. I've written a whole book on what happens to women in Europe in some of these places. The women have completely adapted because it becomes a matter of survival.
That's your book, Pray, which
Pray,
I highly recommend to read, listeners.
Unfortunately, I published it during COVID, so I never got the opportunity to come to.
Here's the problem. You need more of the population that's willing to fight back and not be apologetic. Now, why is it that the females capitulate? Why is it that majority of the society capitulates, especially what we saw during the crisis in 2020? Especially what we saw when there was no formula available for infants in the United States, and there was no major rioting from the mothers. We have a society that's too damn complacent, and you better start waking up, or you're going to start losing your civil liberties, your way of life.
And promoted. But I think that book should be republished, updated and republished, because it tells you the whole thing. It doesn't only tell you that these victims of circumstances that is not of their choosing have adapted in the ways that we've just described, but that they've been let down by the elites. Even just the demographics, the counting, the gathering of data, we don't do that anymore. We don't do it honestly. So we downplay. All of these reports and statistics are published that downplay the problem.
Why does anyone wear ponchos if they never actually work? All you need is the bearskin waterproof tactical jacket to bounce water away like a...
Can you spell that out for me specifically?
When I was writing that book and I was seeking to talk to some of these government officials who just give me the data of, sexual assault committed by immigrant men, illegal aliens, etc. We don't really collect data that way. I would find a report here or there, but then there would be some other reports published on top of that saying these reports are exaggerated, it's racist, it's far right. And sometimes they would acknowledge that, yes, there's something going on here, that men from countries that don't respect women are acting in ways that, raping women in groups, assaulting women in groups, making them unsafe. I had also the testimonies of many, many women that I spoke to who were just describing what it was like to live in these neighborhoods and how the neighborhood was changing around them. Some could afford to move and then others who couldn't afford to move. But you couldn't find the data, or even if you found it, you would be told, well, it's just really, it's just 9% of all sexual assaults. Okay, so what's the population of men from Afghanistan in Austria? Okay. Well, no, well, never mind. We're not going to tell you the total population because obviously you can figure out.
Yeah, it'd be 1% or 0.1% of the population committing 9% of the
if they're responsible for. In some of these places, it was 40% of sexual assaults were committed by people who were only, what we were being told, only 1% or only 2% or less than that, or 0.1% of the population were responsible for a massive number of sexual assaults. And the population knows it, whether you have the headline in the newspaper or not. It doesn't matter. In those neighborhoods where these things are occurring, people know it and they talk about it. And now there is the internet, and people are exchanging information without any kind of filtering or editing. And that is what makes me worry, that people are going to start to take the law into their own hands.
You'll be familiar with the grooming gang story in Britain.
Yes.
And it's one that the media and the politicians won't touch, and there's punishment if you do. It doesn't matter which party you're at. And as
I know everything about the grooming gangs. It is part of the story in that book. And I think, again, that sends the message that it's okay to groom white working class girls. In fact, to my horror, some of the middle class white people were describing these girls as white trash. To describe human beings as trash while you're preening around about human rights and putting on your woke hat, I thought that was absolutely disgusting, and it still is. So to have 10, 11, 13-year-old girls be gang raped by men in their 20s and in their 30s, and not once and twice, but be passed over one to the other for months, to excuse that, to cover it up, to cover up for the perpetrators, is to invite more of that.
Do you think it's worth delineating or being more specific about who the perpetrators are in this case? So
let me go to commercial here really quick. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the Max 35. This is a structural nanosilver liquid. You use a tablespoon of this a day if you're not feeling well, or 2 tablespoons of it a day if you're not feeling well. But if you are feeling well, take a teaspoon of it a day. I take a teaspoon of it a day, I swish it in my mouth, I gargle with it, I swallow it. And what this does is it helps to reduce inflammation around your gums. It neutralizes pathogens to reduce the plaque buildup, and it will neutralize pathogens in your upper oral cavity. So please take a teaspoon of it a day as part of the anti-aging protocol to neutralize pathogens. This is the Max 35. I also have it in Max 14 and another product called Silver Solution that has a ppm of 30. So that's parts per million. So I have 3 different price points, 3 different ppms for the structural nanosilver liquid. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get that product. Take it every day. Take a teaspoon of it every day. If you're feeling well, if you're not feeling well, take a tablespoon or 2 a day until you start feeling better. But this is a great way to neutralize pathogens, and it's the first pillar of my anti-aging protocol. The other 2 pillars of the anti-aging protocol is taking a strong antioxidant like C60 and bringing down inflammation by taking turmeric and ashwagandha. This is Bitchute.
In Britain, it's predominantly men from a very, very specific region of Pakistan. So seeing as a lot of this conversation has been about Islam, is it worth delineating, saying this isn't necessarily an Islam issue? It's that this one specific group, because maybe in that specific region of Pakistan, they have a different culture and attitude towards women.
For the sake of position, it's very important to delineate these things. So there is no Islamic rule that says go and rape. And in fact, in Islam, if you have sex outside of marriage, whether you're male or female, you deserve to be punished. In practice, women get more punished than men because it's very difficult to prove that a man has had sexual contact before marriage. It becomes easier to prove for women because of pregnancy and other sorts of trouble that women can get into. So the activities of women in practice are controlled more than that of men. But Islam does not preach that women should be raped or gang raped or any of these atrocities we are seeing. These are tribal practices, and these are very primitive practices. And some of these people are coming from remote, primitive places. But it's very, very important to be explicit and transparent about it.
It's about souls. And this is the animalistic behavior that I'm talking about when it comes to Ishmael and Esau.
It's important to warn communities when you are placing people from these remote areas and say, these are the people that we're bringing into your community. And that is why that acculturation process is so urgent and so important and so needed. And it's, again, I don't know, I like you, I'm feeling very pessimistic because when the numbers were small, some of these things could be done, but now I don't know. I honestly don't know what we can do. I think you're going to have to take this as it's an issue of its own. This is above political parties. It's not something for the right or the left party. It's for the establishment to get together and see what all the symptoms that we've described, and it's just going to get bigger and worse. How do we avoid being the former Yugoslavia?
I'm going to try and attempt to pull this together in a more optimistic direction.
Yeah.
I've got an idea about how I might be able to do that, because I think it's very important to have these honest conversations, even if they're difficult and even if we don't yet have the full answers. But although I fully agree that it's up for these people in power to start having honest conversations, a good start. And you've been having that honest conversation as a parliamentarian and as a global phenomenon speaking around the world. So you've been leading by example. So I only hope that more leaders will be inspired by you. And so that you at least do what you preach, which is wonderful. Yeah. So my attempt to be more positive, if I may, is to talk and ask about your becoming an apostate twice over.
Twice over, yeah.
And coming to Christianity. You spoke about it, you wrote about it in a beautiful Unheard piece. Actually, the Unheard piece, it's almost your conversion to Christianity, it was almost framed in a sort of civilizational, semi-political sense, but your live interview with Freddie Sayers at Unheard, which I had the privilege of being there for, you actually talked a bit more about the spiritual side of it. And it's a very personal question, so perhaps it's difficult to go there. And maybe I'll give the example of myself, which is that when I came to Christ, although I would say I was philosophically at the church door, it wasn't until the experience of a painful divorce that pushed me to that final leap of faith.
Yeah.
And I just wondered whether you had maybe had an experience like that.
Hey, fellow lobsters, if you've ever read 12 Rules for Life, have you ever wondered how to talk to your kids about these ideas? Well, now there's a total.
I definitely had the experience of suffering and pain that I found inexplicable and that I didn't understand. Just the pain was just there. And I tried to ease that pain on my own. It wasn't a physical pain. It is what I would now describe as a pain of the soul, a spiritual void. But I didn't want to give into that because, of course, I was this celebrated atheist, and I felt that this is something I could accomplish on my own with the help of science. And so I started reading about the brain and seeing psychiatrists and trying to get rid of and minimize what I was feeling by sedating myself with alcohol. I noticed that when I drank wine, I felt more cheerful. And so I thought, well, I can cope this way. But the pain it never eased, and the suffering never went away. And I got myself, I think, into a place where I had to surrender. And I felt this sense of surrendering to the void, just pure darkness. I was going through periods where I wanted to black out, and that's all I wanted to do was just black out. And when I came to, I wanted to black out again. And then I told you one of the places where I sought help. This woman explained to me what was wrong to me, what was wrong. And she said, of course, we see people like you all the time. And after listening to my story, she said, I think you're looking for this in the wrong places. I explained to her, I wanted for nothing when it came, materially speaking. 2 beautiful, healthy children, very happily married. My work is doom and gloom. But I even had the choice to give up my work if I wanted to. Still, I had this pain. And then she said, well, I would say you are actually spiritually bankrupt. But in seeking answers, give it a try. And I think I was in this place of, I actually have nothing to lose. And through that, those conversations and what followed, I started to do what I never did before, which was to surrender, to seek help in complete humility, in what's transcendent, and acknowledge that we have a different dimension altogether, which is just more than just eating and satisfying our material needs. That as maybe that's what makes us different from animals, is that as humans we do have something called a soul and a spirit and a mind, and it hungers for something more, and maybe in some people more than others, but I'll only speak for myself. And I started to look, and I found the message and the teachings of Jesus Christ profound. And I have to say, I may have done that in the past, but I never allowed myself to. I was too proud, in hindsight, probably too stupid.
What about Christ? Was there a passage, or was there something specific about Christ that turned you to him rather than, let's say, another religion or another transcendental?
So when I conceptualized a God, of course, the first thing I did was, and that explains my resistance, was I always associated God with horrors, with pain, with threats, fear, intimidation. But when I started to conceptualize, I thought a figure of who's the opposite of that. And I think I can sum up the message of Jesus with love. The constant repetition of love, unconditional love, and a God who loves you and died for you. And what's described as sin, I've come to understand as these are just human defects which we are born with. That's what makes us complicated as humans, the human condition. And that you can't overcome that, and that actually becomes actual freedom, which is what I've always looked for, was freedom of the mind, freedom of the heart. And I think I've come to that freedom. But Winston, before I go on this, I also want to tell you, I don't do these things by halves. So I've signed up for I used to put the label Christian on myself when I have so little knowledge of Christianity. So signing up for study of a proper in-depth study of the Old and the New Testaments. And I'll report back on that I want to turn that article into a book. And I think that book length space gives me the opportunity to describe the personal journey itself, but also what I mean when I say Christianity now with a big C. Is also where the answer to some of these problems lie. The social cohesion that's slipping away, not just between Muslims and non-Muslims, but also in general. Just set the threats of radical Islam aside and just look at our own communities, and we are fractured and fragmented. And civilizationally speaking, I don't think we've ever felt this threatened before. And I think that Christianity with a big C, and the lessons of Christianity, the institutions we inherited from Christianity, the teachings we inherited from Christianity, I think that's what glues us together, and that could just be the glue. That could just be where we find that we can come together on and share a minimal, moral framework to cohere and fight this. Go back to the figure of Jesus, and it's the way he speaks of those who are loathed, who are cast aside from society, the poorest of the poor, the weakest of the weak. I think that message is just the very opposite of let's conquer by the sword. And I feel my soul is conquered through that message of undying love, rather than the fear that you may lose your head unless you believe.
Do you think that the West can refine its faith? I mean, Britain is now a minority Christian country, and numbers are only going down. How does Britain find its Christian soul again?
I think it's for the remaining Christians who understand what's at stake to come together, also set aside their factional differences. It's interesting, after I wrote that article, some of the responses I got from Christians was, my church is better than their church, or
Wi-Fi radiation causes cancer.
from your cell phone. I mean, there's cell phone tumors. I'm representing hundreds of people who have.
yeah. Don't be taken in by that group, which I think is just don't do that. Look at the big picture. Look at what's at stake, and come out and show. Demonstrate really what it is to be a true Christian. And I think there's not everything is broken. I know we've had a very pessimistic conversation, but there's still a great deal here if we want it. Yeah. When I told you I was going into blackout after blackout, and I thought it was all over, one of the things, as I was reading through this, I'm sure you're familiar with it, the big book for Alcoholics Anonymous. It's just all you need to do is pray. You've nothing to lose. Just pray and ask and see what happens. And I think I was on my knees there at that time, and I thought, I'll just do it. And then my prayers were answered. And so maybe on a collective, when we despair, maybe all we need to do is just ask.
Mm. Wow. As someone who was both a Muslim and a Christian and an atheist,
Yeah.
but specifically both Muslim and Christian, so you would be in a very good position to give insight here. Is where is the crossover? Where's the common ground? Where's the common ground between the Muslims and Christians, so that we can talk, we've talked about unity and cohesion, and
Yeah.
where is it that you think that we can come together?
Our common ground is our common humanity. And a Christian will.
My take on this is that when you're talking about Western civilization, the Judaic Christian elements of Western civilization versus, let's say, Islamic civilization, there needs to be a battle that takes place where it ends the final question of the Crusades, and there needs to be a absolute destruction of the Islamic faith. And if you don't, then it will rear its head up again, and this will lead to further division in society and upheaval as the pendulum swings to a strengthening of the soul root of Esau, especially when you look at it at the low frequency fib sequence. Now, I just think it's just too utopic to think that we can live in harmony with animals, and therefore it needs to go kinetic and just let it all happen. Just finally solve what should have taken place during the Crusades.
To the Muslim, I don't want to convert you, because I think a true Christian believes that conversion, again, is conquering the soul through truth, the pursuit of truth, and not through intimidation. So I don't believe in forcing people to believe in what they don't want to believe in. But it's our common humanity. A Muslim individual will understand, and like any other human being, boundaries. And I think the best, most honest thing that a Christian can do in relationship to a Muslim or any other person is to lay out where the boundaries lie. And therein is a great deal of honesty. And so I think as a Christian nation, it was good to say we are welcoming, because that's part of our heritage and our legacy is to be welcoming. But that's to also lay out and say, here's what we cherish, and you establishing an infrastructure of spreading everything that's contrary to our values and our legacy. And I think that if you explain it and you say, we can't take that anymore, I think that's also Christian. And in that relationship, you are prepared to share with the Muslim what you have, break bread, develop friendships, live together peacefully. But it's important for everyone to know where the boundaries lie.
Is this how you present important work to?
Finally, on a fun note, because I think that's very optimistic and positive, but now a bit of fun. After you published your letter, your friend Richard Dawkins wrote 2 open letters in response. The first one, he said, quoting your article, he in response to you, he said, intelligent people don't believe something because it comforts them. They believe it because and only because they have seen evidence that supports it. And then he went on to say, Ayaan, you are no more of Christian than I am. Is he right? Is it only intelligent people who, or rather, is it correct that intelligent people can't possibly believe in a metaphysic?
So again, I want to emphasize, Richard is a friend, and I adore Richard very much, and of course, Sam Harris, I also adore and respect, and you know my relationship with Christopher Hitchens, Lawrence Krauss. I'm definitely not going to denounce or turn my back on my atheist friends. They will remain my friends. I want to say, however, there is Richard there is describing one form of intelligence, and that there are, again, to go back to this concept of the spirit and the soul and spiritual hunger, need, that you can also describe as a form of intelligence. And I think if you focus on just the material and the material world, you are developing the intelligence that's relevant for that, and you're ignoring that the human being and the human condition is far more complex than just that. And that's what I'd like to say to Richard.
Well, I should be a bit more fair to Richard, because in his second open letter to you, he actually was quite humble and said that that he was open to conversation and that he acknowledged that he had perhaps something to learn. And you are going to be speaking with him, May 3rd and 4th, New York City.
Yes.
And you're going to be discussing these very questions: the nature of God, the value of God.
Yeah.
Is that a conversation we should be excited about?
I think we should be excited about it, and also in the spirit of coming together. And I know I call Richard Christian, and he says, "You're no more Christian than I am," but I think he really is truly Christian. He doesn't know it. But what he does know, what Richard knows, and I think what Sam knows, and what those of us who understand the value of Western civilization, what they do know is that we really have to come together now. And I think we, my atheist friends and I, can illustrate, we can demonstrate on that platform, for instance, that it's perfectly fine and it's possible to have different views of the world and have a great affection and respect for one another. And that in itself is a product of Western civilization. I want to demonstrate that we are having that. We are able to have that conversation in May here. I wonder if that.
I disagree with her. The point that where we can just all come together and sing Kumbaya, that may only happen in a very short time span. But if you look at the larger arc of history, there's going to need to be this major battle between Jacob and Esau must be destroyed. Because if not, you will have Esau have the capability to rage more destruction that the earth has never seen before. And they will do it because of their soul root. So no, I disagree. This is coming to a head where evil must be destroyed. And from my perspective, the soul root of Esau must go down. It cannot be allowed to rise up again.
In China today, or Russia, or any of the Muslim countries, this is what makes us unique. And there's a reason why most human beings want to come here. The failure of Western civilization and Christian civilization is we just don't share the thing that's the most that defines us. And this is our foundational principles. We just say, you can come here and carry on the way you used to at home.
Mm.
And then we end up becoming like them instead of them becoming like us.
Mm.
So I look forward to talking to Richard and showing that we can do that.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
So I will see you there in New York, May 3rd and 4th. But Ayaan, thank you for speaking with me today. There were some very difficult taboo topics to unpick there.
Yeah.
And thank you for being such a leading voice and a courageous voice.
I'm going to embarrass you and ask you how old you are.
I'm 36.
So that means it's you, the 36-year-olds, millennials, and people younger than you, the Gen Zs. I think you have to step up now. And I know you are stepping up as an individual, but you guys need to step up because it's your world now.
Yeah. I'm very glad you say that because
Yeah.
I'm desperate for my generation to step up.
Richard is 82. I'm 54. We're fading. We're the ones who are leaving the stage.
You're not fading, but
we're leaving the stage, and it's your world. It's your heritage. So you really have to step up. And don't let it devolve into violence.
No, that's for sure. Well, on that note,
Yes.
Ayaan Hirsi Ali, a pleasure and honor to speak with you. Thank you so
I think that was a very good interview. Again, I'll just reiterate my stance, and that is that this is a battle of souls, the soul roots, and it's going to be the battle of civilization. And if you want Western civilization to survive, then the soul root of Esau must be destroyed. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, follow my protocol, my anti-aging protocols, and get the products that I offer. I have partnered up with Rainbow Herbals, and we've created these deodorant bars that are in citrus scent and in peppermint, lavender, and tea tree. They're made from all essential oils from the Himalayas. And as you know, I believe in providing products to the audience that have dual purpose. So you use this as a deodorant, but you can also use it as a detox. It'll help to detoxify as you're using it as a deodorant because of the essential oils. They're very high quality. They're from the Himalayas, and it will help with pulling out toxins and bringing down inflammation and that aspect to it. So there's a dual purpose with these deodorants. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get those deodorants and all the other great products that I offer. And just a reminder, I have this new class series. It's on pulmonology. So you learn about how the lungs work. You can purchase that lecture series for $50. You get 22 lectures. You're able to download the PDF files. Once you make the purchase, you'll get a password to be able to see those PDF files and to see the video lectures that I do for each section. There's 22 sections. You'll learn a lot about the pulmonary system, the embryology, the anatomy, different diseases, how they're treated, how to do lung examinations, how to read x-rays and CT scans. We'll go over different diseases like lung cancer and tuberculosis, cystic fibrosis, pneumonia. You learn a lot. Why would you want to purchase this product? To challenge your mind, to be able to get more information on how the human body works. But not just that, to be able to reduce the power imbalance between your doctor and the patient. So when you're going in and seeing the doctor with more knowledge about how the body works, you're going to be able to take control over your healthcare. You're going to be able to have a more informed discussion with your doctor and be a more discerning patient. In addition, as you learn how the human body works, you'll be able to learn on how to treat the human body better. And it's about preventative medicine. If you live the proper lifestyle and do the proper supplementation, you can slow down the aging process and disease. It's not a silver bullet, but it will help. And when you do that on a regular basis, there's a compounding effect, especially when you start following these protocols that I talk about. So please go to the store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, get the products, and pick up the module, the pulmonology module for $50. You'll get access through a password that's emailed to you, and you can go at your own pace. You can watch those videos multiple times. You can download the PDFs and learn and challenge your brain. And you're gonna power. Knowledge is power, and you'll be a more discerning citizen. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the different products, especially the pulmonology module. Thank you for listening, and have a nice day.